A while ago, I walked into a client workshop, knowing exactly what decision I needed them to make. By the end of the meeting, they suggested it themselves. And that's the strange part. I didn't convince them, I didn't argue. I just asked one question. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how that happens and give you the 3-step system to repeat it. Influencing decisions isn't manipulation, and it's not a personality gap. It's an engineering problem. And you already know how to solve those. So let me give you the blueprint. There's a moment I keep coming back to. I'm sitting in the room with 3 people from the client side and a few from our company. And we've had a long day, a client's workshop. We've been sitting there for hours. The energy is dropping and the meeting is about to end. And I feel like it's about to end the same way most meetings end, with good intentions but no clear decision. But I needed one decision that day. So when the room went quiet, I asked one question. I told them we didn't need to decide anything officially now, but I just needed a gut feeling, something penciled in so I could keep moving. A few minutes later, they landed exactly where I needed them to land. That question looked spontaneous, but it wasn't. It only worked because I'd already spent months understanding how they saw the problem. And that realization actually didn't start with this client. It started because I became slightly obsessed with someone I saw on LinkedIn. She was another engineer. She just stepped into a leadership position few people ever reach. And every interaction made it look effortless. She wasn't loud and she wasn't overly charismatic. She kept her engineering heart. Just people moved naturally with her. And I had this uncomfortable feeling that feels like jealousy at first, but it's something different. It feels like evidence. Like maybe some people simply have something you don't. I even made a video about that feeling. And one suggestion in that was to get curious about that feeling because it tells you something you can learn about yourself. And that's exactly what I did. I started paying attention, not to what she said, to what she consistently did. And eventually I realized something. She wasn't naturally confident and she wasn't naturally influential. She was running a system. And she internalized it so deeply that it looked like personality. Once I saw it, I started to see it everywhere, including my own client conversations. Eventually, I realized that every successful conversation follows the same 3 steps. Ground, aim, and lead. 6 months earlier, they sent me their room standards. And within 5 minutes, I could already see 2 things. They didn't have room standards. They believed they had standards. And those standards were making their lives significantly harder than it needed to be. The temptation was obvious. Tell them why they're wrong and show them the fix. Engineers love doing that. Instead, I became curious. Every week we had a 30-minute call. He brought topics and I did the research. Slowly, I stopped learning about technology and started learning about him. What kept him awake? What success meant? Why monitoring mattered? Why scalability mattered? Why some rooms were impossible to maintain? Eventually, I could predict what he would bring up next before he even mentioned it. The old move would have been, let me explain why your standards need to change. The new move became, before I recommend anything, help me understand what we're optimizing for. That's ground. You're not presenting, you're locating. Before you can move anyone, you need to understand where they're standing. Once I knew where they were, I could finally ask a different question. Not, how do I sell my solution? But where do they need to arrive before my solution even makes sense? Because they didn't need my argument. They needed to realize something themselves. The old move? Your current approach won't scale. The new move? Let's test whether your current approach is actually solving the problem you just explained. That's aim. I wasn't pulling them towards my solution. I was building a bridge from theirs. Which brings us back to the room. By the time I asked that final question, the decision had already happened. Not consciously, but structurally. Ground was finished. Aim was finished. Lead was simply the last step. So instead of saying, "Here's my recommendation," I asked, "Given everything we've discussed today, what do you think the next step should be?" And they answered. They believed it was their decision. Because it was. I was just building the bridge for them. Ground is the hardest part, mostly because we skip it. We assume, we project, we mistake confidence for understanding. So here's the tool I use before I recommend anything. 3 questions. What do you currently have in place? What's not working about it? What would good look like? Then listen. Not just for what they say. Listen for what they never mention. Because that's usually where the real problem is. If you're an analytical thinker, you're already good at pattern recognition. These questions simply give your brain better data. I didn't discover these questions overnight. I was deliberately collecting them. And you can start using them in the first 10 minutes of any conversation. The woman on LinkedIn never looked influential because she was performing confidence. She looked influential because she performed this system long enough that it became invisible. And that's probably the biggest misconception about leadership. The people who move a room aren't usually the one with the strongest arguments. They're the ones who understand the room before they try to change it. Leadership isn't about becoming more convincing. It's about improving your diagnosis. Ground, aim, lead. So in your next client conversation, don't try to explain your recommendation better. Collect better data first. Ask one more question before you give one recommendation. Test the variable. Ground is easy when the room talks back. But imagine you're standing in front of 40 people and no one answers. You still have to know where they're standing. Here's the strange part. Ground, aim, lead still work. But the first step needs to be replaced with something else. That's what the next video is about.